My sister kicked my pregnant belly just to see if it makes any sound. When I tried to confront her, my parents tried to defend her, saying, "Erica, did she say anything to you? We are here for you, please listen to us." While she came up to me crying and kicked me hard again, which left me unconscious. Then my parents started saying, "Come on, wake up, Erica has had enough now, you can stop your drama, we don't have time for you." While my dad kicked me and shouted, "Hurry up, or I will just have you get kicked by Erica again." As soon as my husband saw them, they panicked, but when the doctor came and gave us the report that the baby wasn't moving anymore, my husband made their life a living hell. My name is Sarah, and this is about how my family destroyed everything I held dear, and how my husband Michael made them pay for it in ways they never saw coming. Growing up, I always knew I was the scapegoat in my family. My younger sister Erica was the golden child who could do no wrong, while I was blamed for everything. My parents, David and Linda, made it clear from an early age that Erica was their priority. She got the better room, the newer clothes, and most importantly, their unconditional love and protection. When I met Michael in college, it was like finding my salvation. He was kind, successful, and most importantly, he saw my worth. We dated for 3 years before he proposed, and despite my family's lukewarm reception of him, we had a beautiful wedding. Michael worked as a corporate lawyer at one of the city's most prestigious firms, while I taught elementary school. 2 years into our marriage, we found out I was pregnant. Michael was over the moon, and I was terrified but excited. We'd been trying for months, and when that positive test showed up, it felt like our lives were finally beginning. We decided to wait until the second trimester to tell anyone, wanting to make sure everything was okay first. At 12 weeks, we got the all clear from our doctor. The baby was healthy, developing normally, and we were officially out of the danger zone. That weekend, we decided to visit my parents to share the news. I should have known better. When we arrived at my childhood home, Erica was already there with her boyfriend Jake. She'd been dating him for about 6 months, and from what I could tell, the relationship was rocky. She was between jobs again, living with our parents, and seemed more bitter than usual. Well, look who decided to grace us with their presence," Erica said as we walked through the door. She was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through her phone with that familiar look of disdain she reserved just for me. "Hi, Erica," I said, trying to keep things civil. "Mom, Dad, we have some exciting news to share." My parents looked up from the kitchen where they were preparing dinner. Mom wiped her hands on her apron and came over, followed by Dad. "What's the news, honey?" Mom asked, though her attention seemed divided between me and whatever Erica was doing on her phone. "We're having a baby," Michael announced, wrapping his arm around my waist with the biggest smile I'd ever seen. The reaction wasn't what we expected. Mom's face lit up briefly, but then she glanced at Erica, whose expression had turned dark. Dad cleared his throat uncomfortably. That's wonderful, Sarah," Mom said, but her voice lacked enthusiasm. "How far along are you?" 12 weeks, I replied, my hand instinctively going to my still small bump. "Everything looks perfect. The doctor says the baby is healthy and developing right on schedule." 12 weeks and you're just telling us now?" Dad asked, frowning. "Don't you think your family should have been the first to know?" Before I could answer, Erica suddenly stood up from the couch. "Wait, you mean you're actually pregnant? Like, there's actually a baby in there?" She walked over to me with this strange expression on her face, somewhere between curiosity and something darker. "Yes, Erica, that's generally how pregnancy works," I said, immediately regretting the sarcastic tone. I knew better than to provoke her. Without warning, Erica reached out and poked my belly hard with her finger. "Huh? It doesn't look like much. Are you sure there's actually something alive in there, Erica?" Michael stepped forward, his voice sharp. "What are you doing?" "I'm just curious," she said with that innocent voice she used whenever she was about to do something horrible. "I mean, how do you even know if it's alive? Like, does it make sounds or something?" Before anyone could react, Erica pulled back her leg and kicked me square in the stomach. Not hard enough to knock me over, but hard enough that I doubled over in pain, gasping. "Erica!" I screamed, clutching my belly. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Michael immediately moved to my side, his face red with fury. "Are you insane? You could have hurt the baby." But instead of rushing to check on me, both my parents immediately turned their attention to Erica, who had started crying crocodile tears. "Erica, sweetie, are you okay?" Mom rushed to her side. "Did she say anything to upset you? We're here for you, please listen to us." "She was being mean to me," Erica sobbed, playing the victim perfectly. She always talks to me like I'm stupid. I was just trying to understand about the baby, and she got all sarcastic with me. Sarah, you know how sensitive your sister is, Dad said, his voice stern. There was no need to snap at her like that. She kicked me, I shouted, still holding my stomach. She deliberately kicked my pregnant belly. It wasn't hard, Erica whimpered. I was just playing around. She's being so dramatic about everything. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My sister had just assaulted me while I was pregnant, and my parents were consoling her. Michael looked like he was about to explode, but I touched his arm, trying to keep the situation from escalating further. Look, let's just forget about it, I said, though my stomach still ached. I'm fine, the baby's fine, and we came here to share good news. But Erica wasn't done. Through her fake tears, I could see that familiar glint of malice in her eyes. I still don't understand how you know if it's alive, she said, her voice taking on that innocent tone again. I mean, it's so small. Maybe if I... She suddenly lunged at me again, this time kicking me much harder in the stomach. The force of it sent me stumbling backward, and I lost my balance, hitting my head hard against the corner of the coffee table as I fell. The last thing I remember was the sharp pain in my skull and Michael screaming my name. When I started to regain consciousness, I could hear voices around me, but everything was fuzzy and distant. My head was pounding, and there was a terrible ache in my abdomen. Come on, wake up, I heard Dad say impatiently. Erica has had enough now. You can stop your drama. We don't have time for you. I tried to open my eyes, but everything was blurry. I could make out shapes moving around me, but I couldn't focus properly. Seriously, Sarah, this is ridiculous, Mom's voice chimed in. Your sister barely touched you. There's no need for all this theatrics. I tried to speak, to tell them that something was wrong, that I was really hurt, but only a weak groan came out. Hurry up, or I'll just have you get kicked by Erica again, Dad said, and I felt his foot nudge my side roughly. That's when I heard Michael's voice, and it was like nothing I'd ever heard from him before. Pure, unadulterated rage. Get away from her, he roared, and suddenly the room went silent. I managed to open my eyes enough to see Michael burst through the front door, still in his work clothes. He must have come looking for us when we didn't answer our phones. His face was a mask of fury as he took in the scene, me lying unconscious on the floor, my parents standing over me looking annoyed rather than concerned, and Erica sitting on the couch with smeared makeup from her fake crying session. What did you do to her? Michael demanded, immediately dropping to his knees beside me and carefully checking my pulse. She's being dramatic, Dad started to say, but Michael cut him off. She's unconscious. Her head is bleeding. Michael pulled out his phone and dialed 911. I need an ambulance. My pregnant wife has been assaulted and has a head injury. Assaulted? Mom scoffed. Don't be so dramatic. Erica was just playing around. Michael's eyes went deadly cold as he looked at my family. Playing around? She's pregnant, and she's unconscious on your floor with a head wound. What exactly happened here? While we waited for the ambulance, Michael held my hand and kept me talking to make sure I stayed conscious. My family stood around looking increasingly uncomfortable as the reality of the situation began to sink in. When the paramedics arrived, they immediately stabilized me and asked what had happened. She was kicked in the stomach by her sister and fell, hitting her head, Michael told them without hesitation. Sir, we need to take her to the hospital immediately, the lead paramedic said. Head injuries during pregnancy are extremely serious, and we need to check on the baby. The ride to the hospital was a blur of medical equipment and concerned voices. Michael held my hand the entire time, and I could see the worry etched in every line of his face. The paramedics kept asking me questions to keep me conscious. What's your name? What day is it? How many fingers am I holding up? Every bump in the road sent shooting pain through my head and abdomen. Ma'am, can you tell us exactly what happened? One of the paramedics asked as he checked my vitals. My sister kicked me, I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm pregnant. She kicked my stomach. The paramedic's expression darkened. How hard? Was it intentional? Very hard. Twice. And yes, it was completely intentional, Michael answered for me, his voice tight with controlled rage. The first time, she claimed she was just curious. The second time, she did it hard enough to knock my wife unconscious. I could see the paramedics exchanging meaningful looks. They'd obviously seen domestic violence cases before, but this one was particularly disturbing given my condition. At the hospital, they immediately took me for tests and monitoring. The emergency room was a flurry of activity as nurses hooked me up to various machines. The fetal heart monitor was the most important one, its steady beeping was the only thing keeping me from complete panic. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm Dr. Richards," the emergency room physician said as he examined the cut on my head. "We're going to need to do a CT scan to check for brain injury, but first we need to make sure it's safe for the baby. Dr. Martinez, your OBGYN, is on her way." While we waited, a police officer arrived to take a report. Officer Patricia Williams was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes who specialized in domestic violence cases. "Mrs. Thompson, I know this is difficult, but I need to ask you some questions about what happened today," she said gently, pulling up a chair beside my bed. I told her everything, how Erica had always been the favorite, how she'd kicked me the first time out of supposed curiosity, how my parents had immediately defended her, and how she'd kicked me much harder the second time while crying fake tears. "And your parents' reaction when you lost consciousness?" Officer Williams asked, taking detailed notes. "They told me to stop being dramatic," I said, fresh tears streaming down my face. "They said Erica had had enough and I needed to stop my drama. My father even kicked me while I was unconscious and threatened to have Erica kick me again if I didn't get up." Officer Williams looked disgusted. "Mrs. Thompson, what your family did constitutes assault, especially given your condition. The fact that your parents failed to seek medical attention and actually encouraged further violence makes them accessories. We'll be pressing charges." Michael squeezed my hand. "Will that be enough to make sure they can't do this again?" "We'll do everything we can within the legal system," Officer Williams promised. "But I have to be honest, sometimes family assault cases are difficult to prosecute, especially when the perpetrators claim it was just a misunderstanding or accident." That's when I saw that look in Michael's eyes again. The cold, calculating expression that meant he was already planning something far beyond what the legal system could provide. Dr. Jennifer Martinez, my OBGYN, arrived within an hour. She was a woman in her 50s who I'd grown to trust completely over the past few months. Her expression was grave as she examined me. "Sarah, I need to be honest with you," she said gently. "The impact to your abdomen was significant. We're going to do an ultrasound to check on the baby, but I want you to prepare yourself." Michael squeezed my hand tighter as they wheeled in the ultrasound machine. Dr. Martinez applied the gel to my stomach and began the scan. The silence in the room was deafening as she moved the probe around, searching for the familiar sound of a heartbeat. But there was nothing. "I'm so sorry," Dr. Martinez said softly, tears in her eyes. "The baby. There's no heartbeat. The trauma to your abdomen caused a placental abruption. I'm afraid you've lost the baby." The sound that came out of me wasn't human. It was pure anguish, the kind of grief that tears your soul apart. Michael collapsed into the chair beside my bed, his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "We need to schedule a D&C procedure," Dr. Martinez continued gently. "I'm so sorry for your loss." My family had followed us to the hospital and were waiting in the hallway when Dr. Martinez delivered the news. When they heard my screams of grief, they finally understood the gravity of what had happened. But even then, their first instinct wasn't to comfort me or take responsibility, it was to protect themselves. I could hear them talking in hushed voices outside my room. Mom was crying, but it sounded more like fear than genuine sadness. Dad was trying to figure out their legal exposure. And Erica? Erica was still trying to play the victim. "I didn't mean for this to happen," I heard her whimpering to someone, probably a nurse. "I was just playing around. How was I supposed to know something like this could happen?" A few minutes later, they tried to come into my room. Michael immediately blocked the doorway. "Get out," he said quietly. "You are not welcome here." "Michael, please," Mom said, her voice shaking. "We're family. We need to be together right now." "Family?" Michael's voice was incredulous. "You killed our baby and then told my wife to stop being dramatic while she was unconscious on your floor. You are not family. You are strangers who happen to share DNA with my wife." "It was an accident," Dad said, trying to push past Michael. "Nobody meant for this to happen." "No," Michael said firmly, not moving an inch. "An accident is when someone trips and falls. What happened today was deliberate assault followed by criminal negligence. Your daughter intentionally kicked my pregnant wife in the stomach twice, and when she lost consciousness from the second blow, you stood over her telling her to stop being dramatic instead of calling for help." Dr. Martinez appeared behind them, having overheard the conversation. "I'm going to have to ask you all to leave," she said firmly. "Mrs. Thompson needs rest, and this conversation is clearly causing her distress. Security can escort you out if necessary. We have a right to see our daughter, Dad said, his voice rising. Actually, you don't, Dr. Martinez replied calmly. Mrs. Thompson is an adult, and she has the right to refuse visitors. And given the circumstances that brought her here, I think it's best if you leave now. After they were gone, Michael stepped out of the room, and I could hear him talking to someone in the hallway. His voice was quiet, controlled, but there was something terrifying in its calmness. You killed our baby, he said simply. Your daughter killed our child, and you stood there and let it happen. You kicked my unconscious, pregnant wife and told her to stop being dramatic while she was losing our baby. Now wait just a minute, Dad started, but Michael continued as if he hadn't spoken. I want you to understand something very clearly. Sarah and I are done with all of you. You will never see or hear from us again. And if you think this is over, you're very wrong. You have no idea what you've just unleashed. The next few weeks were the darkest period of my life. The D&C procedure went smoothly from a medical standpoint, but emotionally, I was destroyed. I'd been carrying our baby for 12 weeks, making plans, buying tiny clothes, imagining our future as a family of 3. Now all of that was gone, ripped away by my sister's cruelty and my parents' indifference. Michael took extended leave from work to stay with me. He barely left my side, bringing me meals I couldn't eat, holding me while I cried, and handling all the practical matters I couldn't deal with. He coordinated with Dr. Martinez for my follow-up care, dealt with our insurance company, and fielded the constant calls from my family that I refused to answer. They called dozens of times a day in those first few weeks. When I wouldn't answer, they'd call Michael's phone. When he blocked their numbers, they called his work. When his secretary started screening their calls, they started showing up at our house. The first time they came to the door, I was upstairs in bed, still recovering physically and emotionally. I heard the doorbell ring, followed by Michael's voice, stern and unwavering. You need to leave. Now. We just want to talk to Sarah, Mom's voice pleaded. We need to explain. Explain what? How you watched your pregnant daughter get kicked in the stomach and did nothing. How you told her to stop being dramatic while she was unconscious. How you failed to call for medical help while she was losing our baby. We didn't know it was that serious, Dad's voice cut in. She's always been dramatic about things. How were we supposed to know this time was different? Because she was unconscious. Michael's voice rose for the first time since this whole nightmare began. She was lying on your floor, unconscious and bleeding from a head wound, and instead of calling 911, you told her to stop being dramatic. What part of unconscious did you think was fake? I heard Erica's voice then, smaller and more pathetic than I'd ever heard it. I didn't mean to hurt her. I don't know what came over me. I was jealous, okay? She always gets everything, and now she was having a baby, and Jake and I have been trying for months with no luck. I just snapped. You were trying to get pregnant? Michael's voice was deadly quiet. You were jealous that Sarah was having a baby, so you decided to kick her in the stomach to see if you could kill it? No. That's not. I didn't think it would actually. Erica broke down crying, but it sounded real this time, not like her usual manipulative tears. You need to leave, Michael said again. All of you. And if you come back, I'll have you arrested for trespassing. But they kept coming back. Sometimes together, sometimes individually. Mom would come in the mornings, standing on our doorstep crying and begging to talk to me. Dad would come in the evenings, trying to reason with Michael man to man. Erica came once, late at night, drunk and sobbing, pounding on our door and screaming apologies until the neighbors called the police. Each visit made it worse. Each time they showed up, it was like ripping open the wound all over again. I couldn't heal, couldn't move forward, couldn't find any peace as long as they kept forcing their way into our lives. That's when Michael made the decision to take action. They're never going to leave us alone, he said one evening after Mom had spent 2 hours sitting in her car outside our house, just waiting. They think if they persist long enough, you'll forgive them and everything will go back to the way it was. I can't forgive them, I said, and I meant it. Even if I wanted to, I don't think I could. Every time I see them, all I can think about is our baby. Then we need to make sure you never have to see them again, Michael said with that same cold determination I'd heard in his voice at the hospital. And we need to make sure they understand that actions have consequences. The next day, Michael went back to work for the first time since the incident. But instead of jumping back into his regular caseload, he had a different agenda. He called his friend Robert Chen, who ran the most successful private investigation agency in the city. I need everything you can find on 3 people, Michael told him, sliding a folder across the desk with my family's information. Everything. Financial records, employment history, criminal background, social media activity, driving records, tax filings, medical records if you can get them legally. I want to know every secret they've ever had. This is about what happened to Sarah, isn't it? Robert asked. He and Michael had been friends since law school, and he'd attended our wedding. They killed our baby, Robert. And they're refusing to leave us alone. I need ammunition to make them disappear from our lives permanently. Robert nodded grimly. Consider it done. How deep do you want me to dig? As deep as it takes. While the investigation was ongoing, Michael also reached out to his network of colleagues and contacts. Davidson, Klein and Associates wasn't just any law firm, they represented some of the most powerful people and corporations in the state. Michael had built relationships with judges, prosecutors, politicians, business leaders, and media executives over his 15-year career. I need to call in some favors, he told his senior partner, James Davidson, during a private meeting. Whatever you need, Davidson said without hesitation. What happened to you and Sarah was unconscionable. The firm will support you in any legal action you want to take. It's going to go beyond legal action, Michael said carefully. I'm going to make sure they face consequences for what they did, and that they never have the opportunity to hurt anyone else the way they hurt us. Davidson leaned back in his chair, studying Michael's face. Are we talking about anything illegal? No, Michael said firmly. Everything I do will be completely legal and above board. But I'm going to use every resource at my disposal to make sure they understand the true cost of their actions. Then you have my full support, Davidson said. And the full resources of this firm. True to his word, Michael made sure we never spoke to my family again. We moved across town immediately after I was released from the hospital, and he had all our contact information changed. He hired a private investigator to document everything that had happened that day, including getting a copy of the hospital records that clearly showed the cause of our baby's death. But Michael wasn't done. Not by a long shot. See, what my family never understood about Michael was just how powerful and connected he was in his professional life. He wasn't just any corporate lawyer, he was a senior partner at Davidson, Klein and Associates, one of the most influential law firms in the state. He had connections everywhere, judges, prosecutors, business owners, politicians, and most importantly, he knew how to make people's lives very difficult through completely legal means. The first thing he did was have his firm's private investigators dig deep into my family's background. What they found was a goldmine of information that my family thought was safely buried. Robert Chen's team was incredibly thorough. Within 4 weeks, they had compiled comprehensive dossiers on all 3 members of my family using public records, social media analysis, witness interviews, and legal surveillance techniques. Dad's file was particularly damaging. Through interviews with former co-workers and analysis of public business filings, they discovered strong evidence that he'd been cheating on his taxes for years, claiming deductions he wasn't entitled to and potentially hiding income from his side business repairing small engines. They also found witnesses who could testify to suspicious financial activities at his workplace, small discrepancies that suggested embezzlement but would require official investigation to prove. The investigators also discovered through public observation and witness testimony that Dad had been having an affair with his secretary for over a year. They had photos taken from public locations, restaurant receipts found in publicly accessible trash, and witnesses who had seen them together. Credit card statements that showed expensive gifts were obtained through legal channels when Dad's financial records became part of official investigations. Mom's file revealed her disability fraud through legal surveillance documenting her work activities, but also something much worse. Through interviews with her clients and analysis of pawn shop records that became available during official investigations, they found evidence suggesting that jewelry had gone missing from homes where she worked. The investigators found pawn shop records showing that Mom had sold several pieces of expensive jewelry over the past 6 months, jewelry that potentially matched descriptions of missing items reported to police. But Erica's file was the most extensive. The hit-and-run accident was just the beginning. Through social media forensics and witness interviews, they uncovered evidence of her involvement in a credit card fraud scheme with her previous boyfriend. They also found witnesses who could testify about her selling prescription medications to college students, her anxiety medication and ADHD pills, which constituted drug trafficking under state law. The investigators also uncovered Erica's social media history, which painted a disturbing picture of someone with deep-seated jealousy and resentment issues. There were posts going back years where she talked about how much she hated me, how I always got everything handed to me, and how she wished something bad would happen to me so I'd know what it felt like to suffer. One post, dated just 3 days before she kicked me, was particularly chilling. Some people think they're so perfect with their perfect lives and perfect husbands and now perfect babies on the way. I wonder what would happen if their perfect world got shattered. Would they still be so smug then? Michael's first move was comprehensive documentation and strategic pressure. Using his firm's resources and legal connections, he began building cases that would prompt official investigations. His team compiled evidence packages that included publicly available records, witness statements they legally obtained, and documentation of patterns that would interest various regulatory agencies. For the IRS matter, they focused on inconsistencies in Dad's publicly filed business licenses versus his tax obligations. For social services, they documented Mom's work activities through legal surveillance and witness testimony. For the police case against Erica, they canvassed businesses near the hit-and-run location and found several that still had security footage from 6 months ago. But Michael was just getting started. Dad worked as a manager at a mid-size manufacturing company called Precision Tools Incorporated. Michael made some calls and discovered that the company was actually involved in some questionable safety practices that violated OSHA regulations. An anonymous report was filed, and when OSHA came to investigate, they found numerous violations. Dad, as the manager responsible for safety compliance, was fired and faced personal fines that nearly bankrupted him. Using his connections in the legal and business community, Michael carefully orchestrated a campaign of professional consequences. While he couldn't directly blacklist anyone, he could ensure that Dad's legal troubles became known within industry circles. When potential employers conducted background checks or made informal inquiries, they would discover the embezzlement charges, tax issues, and workplace safety violations. In a tight-knit industry where reputation mattered, this effectively ended Dad's career prospects. Michael also made sure that Dad's affair became public knowledge. He had copies of the evidence sent anonymously to Mom, along with photos and documentation of every hotel visit, every expensive gift, every romantic dinner. The package arrived on their anniversary, with a note that said simply, "Your husband has been cheating on you for over a year. He's planning to leave you once Erica is settled. You deserve to know the truth." The destruction of Dad's marriage happened swiftly after that. Mom threw him out within days, filing for divorce and demanding half of everything. But with Dad's legal troubles mounting and his earning capacity destroyed, there wasn't much left to split. Mom lost her disability benefits, and was required to pay back 3 years of fraudulent claims, nearly $85,000 that she didn't have. But Michael wasn't content to let her off with just financial penalties. He made sure the families she'd been stealing from were contacted and informed about the jewelry thefts. 3 separate families filed police reports, and when the pawn shop records were subpoenaed, the case against Mom became airtight. The media attention was particularly brutal for Mom. "Disabled woman caught in triple fraud scheme" was the headline that ran when her case went to court. The story detailed how she'd been collecting disability payments while working illegally and stealing from the families who trusted her. The photo they used showed her being led away in handcuffs, and it was shared widely on social media with comments about how disgusting it was to steal from people who had welcomed her into their homes. With Dad unemployed and facing his own financial difficulties, and Mom unable to work legally due to her criminal record, they had to sell their house and move into a small apartment in a rough part of town. The house they'd lived in for 23 years, where Erica and I had grown up, was sold at a loss to pay legal fees and restitution. Erica was arrested for the hit-and-run and faced charges for vehicular assault and leaving the scene of an accident. The victim had suffered a broken leg and spent months in physical therapy, unable to work. The security camera footage was crucial. It clearly showed Erica's car hitting the pedestrian and then speeding away without stopping. The investigators had found 3 businesses near the accident site that still maintained footage from 6 months ago, providing multiple angles of the incident. With her previous record of minor offenses, she was looking at serious jail time. But Michael wasn't done with her yet. He had his investigators continue digging, and they discovered that Jake, Erica's boyfriend, was dealing drugs. Michael made sure that information found its way to the police, and when they raided Jake's apartment, they found enough evidence to charge him with distribution. Since Erica was frequently at the apartment and had been helping Jake package and sell the drugs, she was charged as an accessory. The credit card fraud charges came next, when Michael's investigators provided evidence to the district attorney's office linking Erica to the identity theft ring. The DA was particularly interested in prosecuting the case because it involved multiple victims across several states, making it a potential federal case as well. But the most devastating blow came when Michael decided to go public with our story. He had connections at several media outlets, and our story was perfect for the current climate of social media justice. Pregnant woman loses baby after family assault was the headline that ran in the local newspaper. The story included my family's names and detailed exactly what had happened that day, backed up by hospital records and police reports. The story went viral on social media. My family's names, faces, and actions were shared thousands of times. Dad's new employer saw the story and fired him before he'd even finished his first week. Mom was denied employment at several places after background checks revealed her connection to the story. And Erica became a pariah in her social circles. But Michael still wasn't finished. He used his connections to make sure my family faced legal consequences beyond just the criminal charges. He helped the victim of Erica's hit-and-run file a civil lawsuit against her for damages. He made sure Dad was audited by the IRS not just once, but every year for the next 5 years. He had lawyers send cease and desist letters to my family whenever they tried to contact us or tell their side of the story. Most devastatingly, Michael made sure their story followed them wherever they went. Every time Dad applied for a job, every time Mom tried to rent an apartment, every time Erica tried to start fresh somewhere, their names were associated with the story of the family who killed their pregnant daughter's baby and then blamed her for being dramatic about it. Over the following months, Michael's methodical approach yielded results. The various investigations he had prompted led to official charges and consequences for each family member. The process wasn't immediate, justice moved slowly, but it was thorough and devastating. The wrongful death lawsuit was more complex than I initially understood. Our state had specific laws about fetal death claims, and while a 12-week pregnancy qualified under certain circumstances, the case would largely depend on proving that the assault was the direct cause of the loss. Michael's legal team spent months building an airtight case, consulting with medical experts and legal specialists in fetal death litigation. During the depositions, my family finally understood the full extent of what Michael had done to them. They tried to paint themselves as victims, claiming that the punishment didn't fit the crime. But the evidence was overwhelming, and their own words during the depositions only made them look worse. "I didn't think it would hurt anything," Erica said on record. She was being dramatic about everything. "I was just messing around." "We thought she was faking it," Dad said. "Sarah always was dramatic. We didn't know she was really hurt. She was being mean to Erica," Mom added. "We were just trying to protect our daughter." Those depositions were leaked to the media, and the public outrage was swift and brutal. How could parents watch their pregnant daughter lose consciousness and call it drama? How could a sister kick a pregnant woman in the stomach just to see if it makes any sound? The civil case was settled out of court for a substantial sum that would follow my family for the rest of their lives. But more importantly, it was a matter of public record that they had legally been held responsible for killing our baby. 2 years later, our lives had completely changed. Michael and I had moved to a different state where no one knew our story. We'd gone through extensive therapy to deal with our loss and the trauma of that day. We'd learned to find peace and happiness again, though we would never forget our first baby. Through social media and mutual acquaintances, I learned what had become of my family. Dad had developed severe depression and was in and out of psychiatric treatment. The stress and shame had broken him completely. Mom had become a shell of her former self, working multiple cleaning jobs just to keep food on the table. She'd aged 10 years in the 2 years since our confrontation. And Erica? Erica had served 8 months in county jail and was now living in a halfway house, struggling with drug addiction and unable to find steady employment. Her relationship with Jake had ended when he was sentenced to 5 years for drug distribution. She tried to reach out to me multiple times through social media and mutual friends, begging for forgiveness and claiming she never meant for any of this to happen. But I was done. Michael and I had built a new life, and we weren't interested in looking backward. We found peace in our new city, new jobs, and eventually, we were blessed with another pregnancy that resulted in our beautiful daughter Emma. Sometimes people ask me if I think Michael went too far in his revenge against my family. They wonder if the punishment was proportional to the crime. But I know something those people don't understand: my family didn't just kill my baby that day. They destroyed my ability to ever trust or feel safe with the people who were supposed to love and protect me unconditionally. When I was lying unconscious on their floor, bleeding from a head wound and losing my baby, they called it drama. When my husband arrived to find me in that condition, they showed no remorse, no concern, no acknowledgement that they had done anything wrong. Even at the hospital, even when we learned our baby was dead, they tried to minimize their actions and avoid responsibility. Michael didn't destroy my family out of revenge, he held them accountable through legal channels for their actions. Every consequence they faced was the direct result of either their actions that day or other illegal activities they had engaged in previously. He simply made sure that justice was served when the system might have otherwise let them off with a slap on the wrist. The truth is, Michael saved my life that day. If he hadn't come looking for us, I might have died on my parents' floor while they stood over me complaining about my drama. He made sure that my family could never hurt me again, and he made sure they understood the true cost of their actions. Today, as I watch our daughter Emma play in our backyard, I'm grateful for the man I married and the new life we've built together. We named our daughter after Michael's grandmother, a woman who understood the importance of protecting family and standing up for what's right. Sometimes I wonder if my family has learned anything from what happened. I wonder if they understand that actions have consequences, and that some wounds can never be healed with simple apologies. But mostly, I don't think about them at all anymore. Michael and I found our peace, our justice, and our happy ending. And that's more than some people ever get after experiencing such a devastating loss. Our baby's death wasn't meaningless. It taught us who we really could count on when everything fell apart, and it showed us that sometimes the family you choose is more powerful than the family you're born into. In the end, my husband didn't make their life a living hell out of cruelty. He made them face the reality of what they had done and ensured they could never do it to anyone else. And for that, I will be grateful to him for the rest of my life.